I'd like to take this opportunity to welcome everyone to our session this morning on insurance. I know that it's not most hot topic that people want to talk about, but we do think that it's important. And to that end, we have had quite a number of companies ask about it and want to know more. And we have invited Scott Lee, who is a certified broker in Kingston, and he's with McDougall Insurance. He's got 42 years of experience in the commercial insurance industry, so he's got a lot of knowledge in this area. And I think one of the important things that Scott can bring to any type of a company is the ability to work with them and truly understand their business. And this is what a commercial insurance broker will do. And then they can work with the insurance companies to help minimize your insurance premium and help them understand what the risk is associated with your business. And so it's important to find a broker that can truly understand your business. So Scott's here to give us an introduction to what types of commercial insurance are available and what you need to know about insurance, and hopefully help you make some decisions about what you need to do for your business and factor in insurance costs into your business. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Scott and let him tell us more about the wide world of insurance.
Thank you, Rick. Although when Rick asked me this morning how long I'd been in the business, I had to kind of take my socks off and use my fingers and toes. And it has been 42 years, but it's funny. I'm still trying to decide what I'm going to do when I grow up. So, I guess you're never in something too long. And by the way, the answer to that is a professional photographer. But the one that Rick just touched on, what keeps me in this business is talking to business owners, new business owners, established business owners, because we have to do a deep dive into how the business works. So every day I learn something new. Somebody comes up with some kind of a business that sounds absolutely fascinating. I have to learn everything about it. And that way I get to pass that information along to underwriters, and then the underwriters can decide how best to cover it and at what premium. So when you're thinking, what did this poor guy do wrong to get stuck in the insurance business for 42 years? That's what it is. It's not insurance. It's the learning about all the different businesses out there. Next slide. So again, this is going to be a general overview. I'm not going to get too technical here because I think the whole idea was an introduction. So for any of you that are really up on this and have been through it before, I may bore you a little bit, but I think it's good to start. And perhaps in the future, we may do more specific situations like, tech insurance and that sort of thing. So why get insurance? What do you need, and what's the process? Those are kind of the three keys I want to talk about. Next slide. Oh, yeah, well, I've kind of already touched on that. So let's keep going. Next slide. So commercial insurance needs to be individually tailored to a specific business. It's not like going into a restaurant, which is a bad analogy now because we're not allowed to do that, but ordering off the menu and just saying, okay, I want this and it comes with this, and that. It's more like going to a buffet table. And luckily Zoom doesn't show my actual size, but I tend to like to refer to a lot of things in their context with food. So it's the buffet table, and depending on your business, there are a few things that are kind of basic. Do you have a physical location? Or are you operating out of coffee shops and in the basement of your house and after COVID in your customers' boardrooms? Do you have employees, or is this a one-person type business? Are you at the research and development stage, or are you actually selling your product to customers? That has a huge bearing on how liability insurance is charged. When you're doing R&D, you're just really putting together that plan. That idea is being nurtured, and it's once it grows and you can actually harvest it, then it'll be going out to market and people will be buying it. And at that point, when people start to use your idea, your software, your plan, your platform, whatever it is you're doing, that's when they can get into trouble and then blame you for it. Is your customer or funder asking for proof of insurance? This is another thing that, regardless of what I tell you you need or what you think you need, if you are getting a grant from any level of government, in the contract, and there will be a contract, they're going to say somewhere buried deep inside it, this is the insurance you must have. And provincial government, City of Kingston, for example, I know they always ask for $5 million of commercial general liability. So why they're doing that is probably more up to their legal department than up to me, but it doesn't really matter the why. If they have money to give you and they're saying you have to have this to get it, then we get it. No different than if you are buying equipment and the equipment company or the bank is saying, okay, we need you to have this kind of insurance, you just have to get it. And again, the same with your customer contract. You may put in that, pardon me, that you are carrying such and such kind of insurance so that your customer knows that they're protected. I know for things like janitorial services, homeowners and businesses, one of their first questions is, do you have liability insurance? And do you have fidelity insurance? They're kind of worried that if one of your people go in to clean their house and they end up taking all the jewelry out of the bedroom, they want to know you've got insurance for that. Next slide. So what do you need? The basics. Commercial general liability and errors and omissions are kind of the cornerstone of protecting any business. Commercial general liability, which I'll now refer to as CGL, is what most people ask for. It covers bodily injury and property damage caused by you or your business activities. Errors and omissions is a partner to that. If you're doing any consulting or any kind of software development, that is the rendering of a service or failure to render a service that may cause somebody to sue you for a monetary loss. So you've created a program, a software program, and you're saying it's going to do this. So the customer buys it knowing that it's going to do what it's supposed to do. They get it into their business, they start using it, and they find out it's not doing what it was supposed to do. So now it's costing them money, and they're not going to wait too long before they contact a lawyer and decide to sue you, saying, you misrepresented what your product can do for me. And sometimes it may be a misunderstanding, sometimes maybe it was a flaw, but regardless, the insurance policy will pay to hire a lawyer to defend you, and will defend you hopefully that, yeah, it didn't do anything wrong. It did exactly what it was supposed to do. And at the end of the day, and $50,000 later in legal fees, the matter's finished. So typical limits are 2 million or 5 million. We're starting to see now with the provincial government, some of them are asking for 10 million, and that's quite high. Again, 42 years ago when I started in this business, general liability was usually 50,000. And I can remember when it went to 100,000 and 250,000, everybody thought the industry was going to come crashing down. But here we are. 2 million is low, 5 million is normal, 10 million is coming. And yeah, E&O is, if your customers or funders aren't asking you to have E&O, I may be, or your broker may be asking you to get it because there's a real exposure there. The new kid on the block is cyber liability. And it's, in the last couple of years, especially with people working from home and remote, remote work, people are using their computers more than ever, and they're not being as careful as they could. So we're seeing a lot of cyber attacks. A lot of employees are clicking on links that they shouldn't click on, and all of a sudden you're in the middle of a ransomware mess, saying, you got to send us 1,000 Bitcoin, or we're not going to unlock your system. So again, there's ways of it's the word I'm searching for. The ways of protecting your system, but as we've seen, nothing is foolproof. They'll get in. If the bad guys really want to get in, they'll get in. So data that you store for your customers or employees, this is where I talk about PIPEDA, the privacy legislation. If you've got even something as simple as name, email address, and telephone number, if those are in your contacts and somebody hacks into your system and steals them, the government now says you have to notify all those individuals that their information has been hacked. So again, it's, pardon me, no different than in the old days, somebody taking a telephone book and seeing your name and telephone number and home address. But now there's legislation saying you must notify them. And that can be anywhere from $25 a name to $500 a name, depending on what kind of information is there. If you've got a website you're exposed, no matter how secure it is, somebody can get in. If they can get into the Pentagon, they can get into your website. Who developed your website? For a lot of people, I think probably in this audience, you're pretty high tech, so you may be developing your own website. So there's things to be careful of, like where did the artwork come from? Were the images obtained properly? Is somebody going to come at you a couple of years from now and say, gee, those images on your website, those are actually mine and you didn't pay me for them, so I want $1 million. Those are all things to be careful of. So next slide.
Scott, I have a question in the chat. Do you want me to ask it right now or wait until the end?
Now is fine. If a whole bunch come up, then we should probably wait to the end. But if something like, if it's just on what I just talked about, yeah, we can have it now.
Okay, so the question is, if you're a SaaS company, so software as a service, that is still in the research and development or the proof of concept stage, what insurance would be required?
Yeah,
like prior to selling a solution?
Sure, that's a good question. That gets back to the two areas I identified. I would say even at development stage, you should have the general liability as well as the errors and omissions, because although errors and omissions wouldn't happen until somebody's actually using your product, you may be testing it. There may be something that's happening that has causes a gap. Because again, commercial general liability, which is the bare minimum, is just bodily injury and property damage. Errors and omissions is that failure to perform kind of thing. So again, if you get it early, the day that, pardon the expression, you pull the trigger and open up, you're not a brand new business trying to buy E&O insurance. You've already got it, and they've been insuring you since the infancy of the company, and it's easier to continue, or easier to get more options. Does that answer it?
I think so.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah.
Great. So property insurance is fairly basic. It's if you rent an office space anywhere, chances are the lease is going to have a section on insurance in it. If you are leasing equipment, the equipment lease is going to have a clause saying it needs to be insured. If you're using your own house or apartment, a lot of homeowners and tenants policies say that it's for private residential purposes only. So if you're using it for business, you have to tell your agent or broker that you're doing it, and they may say, okay, that's fine. It's just you're sitting at a desk in your rec room or in your dining room with a laptop, no problem. Or the insurer may say, oh, sorry, we can't do that, go away. So it's in a lease situation, or if you're doing really well, if you buy a building, the building needs insurance because the mortgagee is going to ask you to do that. So whatever the landlord or the bank is asking for, that's where the property insurance comes in. Digital devices, again, people will call us and say, oh, my cell phone and my laptop and my portable printer just got stolen out of my car that was parked on the street overnight. Is it covered under my car insurance? Well, no, it's not, because the car insurance covers the car and things that are, permanently attached to it. Is it covered under your personal insurance? If it's used for business, it likely isn't. So, laptops and cell phones and that sort of thing should have their own insurance. Having said that, commercial insurance policies usually have deductibles starting around $1,000. So if you have a laptop and a cell phone, I would suggest using risk management techniques, like don't leave them in the car or, always make sure they're safe. However, if you've now got a staff of 4 or 5 people and you've got equipment at an office, if you suffer a break-in and everything is stolen, then you need to have insurance for that. And typically that is sold on a replacement cost basis. So even if the items are a year or 2 old, you would buy new. So it's not as big a deal now because actually newer items seem to cost less than older items. But time was, we used to have equipment that would have cost $1,000, and 2 years later it was going to cost $2,500. So we have to keep an eye on it. So that's property insurance, just very basically. Next slide. Another kind of insurance, and as I say here, don't forget to insure yourself. And I would say that 90% of entrepreneurs do not have health and sickness insurance. So it's one thing if you're all by yourself and if you get sick and can't work, there will be no money coming in, and hopefully you've made plans for that. But if you've got employees, it becomes more difficult because they are relying on you, the employer, to keep them employed. So if you're the key person and you fall ill, you have a heart attack or get hit by a bus or something, there's got to be some insurance either to bring in somebody temporarily to fill your shoes, or you just kind of have to unfortunately lay everybody off, and then your income is replaced by disability. Now, I won't talk much about this because health and sickness insurance is looked after by life insurance, the life insurance industry, and I'm not licensed to do disability, life insurance, accident and sickness. I just want to bring it up because so many clients, I always talk about it, saying, wow, things are really good. The sales have doubled. You're doing so well. Have you got disability insurance? If you fell down the ski hill at Tremblant, now that you can afford to go away on a trip, and again, post-COVID, and you're laid up for a few weeks, what's happening to your business? And what are you going to do? Because now you have all these expenses, lease payments and what have you. How are you going to manage that? So put that on your checklist. Next slide. Now, what's the process? Pardon me. I'm not used to talking this much. I've been sitting alone for months. What's the process? Do you deal with a broker now for other things? So if you're dealing with an office that has a commercial insurance department, ask them if they can help you. Tell them what you've got, what you're doing. Ask for some help and see if they can do it. If you don't, do you have friends or family that have businesses that can suggest a good broker to you? I mean, a lot of people, mom or dad have businesses and they've been dealing with so and so for 20 years and they're fantastic, and there's already a relationship and they know the family, and it's sort of a natural progression. If none of the above, cheap plug here, McDougall Insurance has been doing this for 75 years. They're even older than I am. So if there is nobody that you can think of, we're here, and we've got now 40 offices across Ontario, everywhere from North Bay and Sudbury to Penetanguishene, Cornwall and Kingston. And every single office has at least one person who is trained in commercial insurance. And I always mention a broker because there's a broker and an agent. The distinction is brokers represent a number of different insurance companies. An agent represents one. So a direct writer like a State Farm, or Desjardins now, or Cooperators or Allstate, their salespeople work for the company. Whereas brokers don't work for a company, they work for you. So when you purchase an insurance policy from a broker, part of that premium is a commission that's paid to the broker, and they really kind of want to make sure that, first of all, you're looked after, and second of all, you are going to be with them for a few years, because that's how we get paid. If you're dealing with somebody who is an actual commercial broker, they're going to help you fill out the applications. And I sent in, and again, maybe in a future talk, there's an application that I sent to Rick from one of our insurance companies called CFC, which is kind of a technology insurance specialist. They're in London, England. They're one of the Lloyd's brokers. And they've got a very good product, but they have really long applications. This one is actually 11 pages. So I don't know if any of you fill out your own tax forms, but if you do, well done. If you don't, these things are kind of like tax forms. So it's always nice to have some help. The broker will find the best insurer to cover your specific business. So again, if you're a consultant, it's one thing. If you're a management consultant, you're a training consultant, or if you're developing software, or if you're developing a platform that, maybe you're trying to do the next Twitter or the next TikTok, the broker can check lots of different insurance companies. I know we've got 40 some odd companies that we deal with, and there's a bunch more that we don't have a contract with, but are available to everybody. And all we need to do is know where to look. The other thing is be prepared to wait. This process takes a while. As I say in the slide, unlike home and auto insurance, the process can take 3 days to 3 weeks. There's actually one I'm working on now that's into its second month of going back and forth, answering more questions, having a company say, oh, no, sorry, we're not able to insure that aspect of the business. So we start from square one, because everybody can get insurance. It's just a question of how much it'll cost and can you afford it? Have you built it into your business plan? So I'm not sure what the sorry, I'm just referring to some notes here. I don't want to forget anything or do something out of order. The right. Okay, no, I'll talk about that later. Next slide. There we go. So yeah, I'm not sure what you are looking for, so I'm kind of hoping that we can have a few questions. And again, if you've got specific questions and you don't have somebody you can talk to now, my contact information is on these slides. Rick has them. You know, I would certainly invite your questions when we're done. Send me an email and we can talk. But as I say, you're starting an exciting part of your life, or maybe this is just another chapter. But your dreams can quickly turn into nightmares. And I don't want to sound negative, but you know, I've been in enough claim situations that even with the best coverage, the proper coverage, the process is very painful. I mean, somebody is suing you, or you had a fire, or you've had a break-in. You know, we're going to help you get back on your feet. We're going to write checks to pay for things. But the downtime and the stress and the you know, the negative impact this has on your life is something that money can't fix. I'd like to think that, you know, people like me can be there to help you through it, but still, it's a terrible thing to go through, especially getting sued. And as I say, you can be sued for anything, whether it's your fault or not. And defending it, we see this too, and I didn't touch on it because I don't know if any of you have staff, but wrongful dismissal is a big generator of lawsuits these days, especially with COVID and people having to lay people off. There's been a lot of wrongful dismissal. There's also, you know, alleged discrimination cases. And if you're the employer, even if these things are completely untrue, you have to hire a lawyer to defend you to prove that. And lawyers charge an awful lot of money, as I think we all know. Liability insurance is kind of the key. You can usually do, if your laptop gets stolen, hopefully everything's all backed up on a cloud somewhere. But if the physical machine is stolen, it's usually, you know, whether it's a cheap one at $500 or a really fancy state-of-the-art Mac for 5,000 or 6,000, that's not going to, you know, basically ruin your life. But if somebody sues you for $1 million and you don't have proper liability insurance, that is going to follow you for a long, long time. So now I guess I would like to open it up with questions. Actually, this 10:33, it's stopped a little faster than I thought it would, or actually, no, a little bit longer than I thought it would. But if you have specific questions, I'd like to have them, and we'll see what happens.
Scott, if you don't mind, this is Ash. I'm just gonna, I didn't put up my hand or anything. I hope that's okay, unless I'm jumping the line.
No problem.
So you mentioned a number of types of insurance, right? You said general, personal, you know, is there, if you will, a checklist of insurance types that we can at least look at on a page that we can sort of narrow down, if you will, what we believe our priorities are based on our different businesses and things like that?
Not really, because every business has different priorities. So again, if you are, you know, manufacturing steel products, it's a completely different list of coverages or types of insurance you need than if you are a software developer or an employment consultant or a management consultant, or, you know, owning a food cart or opening a restaurant. There's just so many of them. You know, again, Google's our friend. It's a good place to start to get an idea, but it's best to actually hook up with an actual person and say, this is what I'm up to. What do you think I need? And then just take it from there.
All right. Thank you.
Okay. Sorry, it's not more specific. I get that question a lot. can you just put it down on paper? Well, until AI gets a lot better, and my son-in-law, who's a consultant at McKinsey, tells me the AI is right around the corner for insurance. I don't think it's going to hit Kingston during my working life, but yes, there's too many variables.
All right, thank you.
Scott, we have a question in the chat. What do you recommend for online fashion businesses? Are there specific things to consider in addition to what you already mentioned?
Good question. I guess online fashion, again, are you reselling clothing, or are you making clothing? Are you designing clothing? If you're reselling, the big warning comes these days, where are the clothes coming from? If they're coming from China, a lot of insurance companies don't want to cover that, because if the clothing themselves have something wrong with them that, you know, causes some horrible skin rash on people, the insurance company that's insuring your business cannot go against the company in China to do something we call subrogation, which is they pay the lawsuit that you've been served with, but then they can go back against the responsible party and try to get some or all of their money back. And China doesn't have insurance. They operate, their economy is completely different, as are a lot of other countries. So yeah, it's I'm not sure if that, as I say, if you're doing fashion design, then there's the whole area of, you know, did you steal somebody else's design? I mean, that's kind of an errors and omissions copyright kind of thing. Is that what does that help?
Hi, Scott. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, for me, it would be retail of in-house designed garments that are like ethically sourced in terms of like where the fabrics are sourced from.
Oh, good.
Yeah, but that's really good to know. Yeah, because I'm in the process of setting up insurance, so I just wanted to know if there was anything that stood out in terms of what you would recommend. So.
Yeah, if you are, you know, you design something and then you outsource it to a Canadian company or an American company to make it, and then you get it back and you sell it online and package it up and send it by, you know, Canada Post or UPS or whoever it is that you use. You know, again, the deductibles are fairly high. So if you've got, you know, a $300 package that you're sending to your customer and it goes missing, commercial insurance typically will have $1,000 deductible. So that's not really going to help you. If you've got $20,000 worth of product that's either going out or coming in, you can get transportation or cargo insurance to protect you. And a word of advice, it seems that all the courier companies, whether it's Purolator or UPS, their insurance is terrible. Then there's not a lot of there's not a lot of alternatives out there, but like a lot of these companies will pay a loss based on bill of lading. So it's essentially the weight of the product, which, you know, if you're selling bags of sand, it's a good idea. If you're selling microprocessors, not so good. So yes, transportation would be the only other thing to think about and trying to build that into the plan.
Scott?
Yep.
Do you see a lot of variation in the insurance costs for insuring software based on what sector of the economy it might be serving?
Definitely, very good question. Pardon me. If it has anything to do with medicine or health, if there's any sort of, if your software has any kind of interaction with people's personal health data, it's very expensive to insure. If it's not health or medical, then it's, again, depending what the end use of the software is, that's what drives the premium. So if you're doing something like creating the next new word processor, it's going to be fairly inexpensive because you can't get into too much trouble with that. But, you know, if you're doing something where, you know, a doctor's office is going to put all their patients' private medical information and then upload it to OHIP, and it's going through a platform that you developed, it's going to be really expensive. It's also, OHIP doesn't tend to do that, so it's probably not going to happen.
Second question, other than health and that type of detailed personal data, is there any evidence of rising or growing claims action in any particular sectors?
It's the rising claims seems to be across the board. You know, with everybody working from home, there's just so much more. People are using their computers now more than ever. I mean, when they were working in their office and had a protected workspace, you know, there were better monitors, it seems. I mean, I don't know, because like in our situation, the computer I use is hooked right through our network. So it's no different in my mind working from my house than working from my office. But I take it in some other sectors, it's just there's doors that are opening up that's allowing a lot more hacking, malware, Trojans being, you know, put into businesses' systems, and you know, the whole ransomware thing is crazy because, again, people are clicking on links because they don't have anything else to do but sit in front of their computer and check email and do Facebook and Twitter, and they're clicking on things, and it's just causing big problems. So yeah, the premiums are going up, but unless you're doing, if you're in an industry that is quote unquote high risk, like anything to do with money, if you're doing software, a new way of transferring funds from, say, a person to a store, sort of the space that PayPal is in right now, or, you know, Moneris is doing the machines that delivery people use. If you're in that world, then it's very, very expensive.
Thank you.
Okay.
Okay, I've got a few questions lined up in the chat here for you. The next one is, I provide online learning collecting data from clients. What would you suggest my liability insurance be set at?
Well, again, I guess online learning collecting data would depend on what the data is, and how it's collected and where it goes. So as I say, it's really hard to have a checklist ready for digital things because there's so many different ways around it. I mean, if you're doing anything online, I think you definitely need general liability and you need cyber liability, because again, if you're something that you're doing gets compromised and your list of clients gets hacked, under PIPEDA, you have to notify everybody that has happened, and there's an expense to that. So definitely cyber, definitely general liability. And again, if you're developing the software, possibly errors and omissions, but again, yeah, we'd probably need to do a little bit more research into what the data is and where it goes.
Okay. The next question I have, oh, let me just make sure. Okay, so that answered Leah's question. So the next question is, I am a virtual assistant with no professional designation. My current insurance broker, McDougall in Winchester, is struggling to find O&E coverage. Part of my service offerings is policy writing, health and safety, fire, human resources. A lawyer tells me I should not be providing this service without coverage. Any advice?
Well, again, yeah, if in 2021, areas that never used to be a problem have become a problem, and it almost changes weekly. So yeah, I would just, again, continue working with your broker I mean, at some point they're going to find something, and it may be expensive, unfortunately. Or if they get to the point where they say, look, we've checked with everybody, and nobody's willing to do it, then yeah, I probably might get a second opinion. But again, a broker, again, I guess if they're with McDougall, they've got a tremendous resource backing them up. I know when I need help, I can go to our head office and talk to the marketing department, and they provide me with ideas on solutions that maybe I don't think of, because there's a lot of industries that I don't deal with. In Kingston, we don't have manufacturing facilities like they do in southwestern Ontario. So if somebody's manufacturing components, I'm not as up on that as maybe some of the brokers that we have in southwestern Ontario. So, again, I think they'll be able to get you something. Having it take a long time isn't unusual. And your lawyer is quite right that, if you're doing this kind of work, you need errors and omissions because it covers things that are not bodily injury or property damage. So again, the failure of your work to perform the way that you intended it to, or even if it's kind of a pie in the sky sort of thing, if somebody decides to sue you for something that's not bodily injury or property damage, the errors and omissions will help pay the legal fees. So yeah, again, without knowing the specifics, there's not much I can say, but just stay on them. Just tell them that you need this, and you need something as soon as you possibly can.
Okay, so the next question we have is, I was told I didn't need errors and omissions from my insurance broker, and that a disclaimer would be all right. I am doing online only at the moment, at home business, but I am doing tarot readings and spirit paintings. Paintings get sent by snail mail. Looking at any advice about the types of insurance I should be enlisting in, and do the insurance costs vary depending on what type of business you are doing?
Good question. Again, doing lots of different things is always a little bit of a problem, because there's an insurance company that might like doing things like tarot reading, and they don't want to do work that an artist would do. So because it's two different areas. Not to say it can't be done. It's just there's a few different parts there. So I mean, I know there are on top of insurance companies, there's another level of insurer that we call MGAs. And an MGA is kind of like a broker's broker, and they have access to, because a lot of insurance companies will only deal with a broker that has a certain level of premium volume with them. It's like you need to have X number of dollars to keep the account open. So the MGAs have more access, and they oftentimes have programs. So like, I know one of them that I dealt with has a whole program for health and wellness. So whether it's meditation or yoga or that sort of thing, because as you say, there's no governing body that says you need to get licensed to be able to do this activity. Therefore, there's really no roadmap to measure whether you're doing it properly or not. So, but there's still that person that may sue you because they perceive you're not doing it right, or they didn't get proper value for their money. So yeah, I think you do need coverage. You do need liability coverage. It doesn't sound really like you have an errors and omissions exposure, but again, if it boils down to being like counseling, because counselors need liability insurance, because if somebody says, I relied on you to counsel me, to point me in the right direction, and you didn't, now my, you know, I've had this terrible life event that I'm blaming on you. Again, they're going to sue you and you need to defend yourself. So yeah, without knowing more and filling out lots of forms, it's kind of hard to judge or to give you specific advice. But as I say, you can always send me an email.
If I may, Scott, what's MGA stand for?
Managing General Agent.
Thank you.
Yeah, as I say, we never call them that. We call them MGAs or brokers, but yeah, that's essentially what they are. Is their legal representation is Managing General Agent.
Any other questions from our audience today? No? Okay. Well, sorry, go ahead, Scott.
I'm just going to say that, I mean, I know when I have webinars and tune into things, sometimes I don't want to ask a question because I don't want to perceive that it was a quote unquote dumb question. So, you know, if there is anything that you would like to ask directly, either go through Rick or my information has been on these slides. So please feel free to ask me questions when this is all said and done. And if I can't answer them, I can probably find an answer. So sorry, Rick, back to you.
Okay, and I was going to pretty much say the same thing. If anybody has any follow-up questions or you think of something later on today that you wished you had asked, by all means, let me know. Or for those of you in the weekend program who aren't familiar with me, I'm Rick from the Startup Runway program, so I work very closely with Carrie. But you know, let myself or Amanda know, and we can forward that on to Scott. Or I see Amanda just put up Scott's email address in the chat. I think today's session was very informative, and I'm hoping that you all go away with sort of a new understanding of what's required in insurance. It is, I think, for most people, a daunting thing to consider. But hopefully, you know, the right broker can help make that easier for you. There's no getting around it. Insurance needs to be part of your business plan. Liability exists virtually everywhere, and that's something that you need to be aware of. I would very much like to thank Scott for coming out today and putting this together for us. I really liked the presentation and the topics that it covered. And if anybody wants to, you know, have a more in-depth session on any one of those topics, I'll see if I can cajole Scott into joining us again for that type of a chat. But with that, I will leave it there. And once again, thanks for coming out and participating. And Scott, once again, thank you so much for sharing your knowledge and wisdom with us today. Really appreciate that.
My pleasure.
Thank you, Scott. Appreciate it.
Thanks, everyone.